There we go. So today, yeah, we're going to be looking at like how I use ZBrush, because it's going to be completely different to how Louis uses it. Louis uses it all the time. I don't. I only use it really for stylized assets, and if I really need to bash the shit out of an object, and really damage it, then I tend to use ZBrush. But otherwise, I tend to stay in Maya. But I'll show you kind of how I use ZBrush and what I use it for. Natalie, do you want to just mute your mic?
Yeah, sorry about that.
It's okay. Thank you. So yeah, so we're going through that, and then I'm going to show you kind of retopologizing inside of Maya. This was a question that someone asked me privately the other day because they wanted to get that character from ZBrush last semester into Sketchfab. And I'll explain why we retopologize and why we do it, because it is a needed step, especially with characters. Environment pieces, it depends the level of detail that you're going for, and it depends the depth of the detail as well, because only a normal map will only fake so much in terms of depth. So sometimes you have to retopologize your low poly mesh because you've damaged it so much that it needs the structure in there to support the bake. And so we'll be going through that as well. But we won't be doing any feedback sessions today. We're going to be doing one, a big one next week, which is planned. Okay. So has anybody ever heard of retopologizing before?
No, I just know we've got to do it for the character at some point.
Okay, so
my group of sourcing showed me how to do it, and in Maya, and like, so I know some.
Okay, so I'm just gonna go through this PowerPoint, which is on Canvas, so you can access it on Canvas, and it's there just really kind of reiterate some of the core principles behind retopologizing. Now, Louis normally does this, so this is the first year me actually teaching this, but I've been doing it more and more in Maya using Quad Draw, which is a fantastic tool. Previous years we taught Popo Gun, but for simplicity and for it being integrated inside of Maya, Quad Draw is like the way forward, because you don't have to install a separate piece of software or buy a separate license. It can all be done inside of Maya. So why do you retopologize? Yeah, I can't speak this today. Why do you do it? And the reason why you do it is because a 6 million polygon character ain't going in the engine, isn't going in the engine at all. Like, it's so bad for, and I think someone was trying to get their stuff into Sketchfab and it was just failing and failing. And the size of the file is massive. The size of the polygon count is massive. You guys have only got 12,000 polys for the characters to work with. So bringing in even a decimated model, which could be like 10, 20% of the decimation inside a ZBrush, is still going to be a lot of polygons. You're looking at hundreds of thousands of polygons. So to put that into perspective, Batman in the Batman Arkham games, he sits in at something like, I think on his highest level of detail, which is the highest LOD, he sits at 500,000 polygons, and then he LODs down. So the lowest LOD, I think he's on something like 60,000 polygons. So you can imagine like trying to put a ZBrush sculpt into a game engine at 6 million polygons. That's like, it's not doable. So we have to fix it. And also the geometry is very messy. You try UV in a decimated model from ZBrush, it's not going to happen. Like, you may as well just start again. So that's why we have to retopologize, because then we can also put loops in the correct places. So for characters, edge loop is really important because you need to flow. The characters' edge loops need to flow with each other. You avoid pinching as well. So when you decimate, or when you just use ZBrush's internal like retopologizing tools, you don't have control on where you put the edge loops. It does it for you, and this can be a problem, especially when you get pinching points for eye joints and that sort of stuff. So that's why we do it in either a third-party piece of software or what we're going to be doing inside of Maya. Also, if you gave a 6 million poly mesh to an animator, they would throw something at you. Something heavy, because you cannot animate a ZBrush model. So yeah, animation is really important with characters because you don't have a character T-posing unless you have a bug in your game. So you need to make sure that you basically have that set up ready for the animator and rigger to come in and rig that, because you can imagine a rigger trying to paint the weights of the joints of the rig into a very highly deformed sculpt. It's not going to happen. So that's what it is in terms. Now, the most common workflow is for a character artist is very much sculpt in ZBrush, decimate it so that you can bring it inside of Maya and work, because Maya doesn't like working over 1 million polygons in scene at once. So, pardon me, you need to decimate it, and I'll show you how to do that today. Use Maya Quad Draw tool to re-topologize it, and then you UV it, and then you texture it. Sometimes in between that, you would send it off to a rigger and animator to, once you've UV'd it, you would send it off to a rigger or an animator, or you rig and animate it yourself. But I'm not asking you to do that in this module for the character guys, because you haven't got enough time to learn that. And then it's texturing, and then it's engine. Like I said, there is another tool called Topogun which does this, but again, it's another piece of software that you would have to download and learn. So it's better to do it in Maya nowadays. Kind of jumping ahead here. There you go. That's the workflow. So the preliminary work, once you've done your high poly sculpt, is you decimate it. Now, what this does is it basically culls the unneeded polygons of a model, and basically allows it to keep its shape and detail while getting rid of polys that aren't necessary. And the reason why we do this before we bring it inside of Maya is Maya really doesn't like a lot of polygons. For me, also as well, I'm using a light version of Maya, so I can't export anything over 300,000 polygons. Thingy. So you do have to be kind of careful with that. But yeah, so always decimate your model before you bring it back into Maya to do the retopologizing stage. And today I'll show you how you do that. So I will show you how to decimate. Now I'm also going to show you how to do quad draw today as well. So that's fine. So Holly taught this last year, and she had this head as an example. So you can see how you're starting to place quads in the important areas which you need. And the best thing with Quad Draw is it does map it to, as best as possible, to the mesh that you've made live. Also some good references of the face, because everybody struggles with the face. So what you're wanting to do, and there is an example up on Canvas of one of Louis' models that he retopologized. So you can download that and have a look at how he does the face and the eyes. Because, like I said before, I'm not a character artist. I don't really do characters in ZBrush. So it's kind of a bit. Sometimes I might not know the answer, but I can definitely speak to Louis and ask him to kind of reach out to Louis to get the answers from him. So that's on Canvas, so you can have a look at that. I wanted to go through this quick because it's better for me to show you how to do it than it is for me to talk about it for like 2 hours. Okay, so for this, let me grab my tablet. So, is anybody not using a tablet for sculpting inside of ZBrush? Okay, I'll take that as everybody's using the tablet, and Louis is not going to wrap a tablet around your knuckles for not using a tablet. Because I don't know how you can sculpt with a mouse. I know some people used a tablet for Maya as well. It's always a weird knowledge for me. But anyway, so I got my sculpt. Now, for today's example, I'm just going to take this one piece in because I just want to show you one piece and kind of how I would go about sculpting it. I know, using a tablet to play video games, some people play video games with different controllers. Once it Dark Souls, someone defeated Dark Souls with a Guitar Hero controller. Yeah. But anyway, so I'm only going to take one piece in to show you guys kind of my sculpting process for stylization, and then we topologize and that sort of stuff. You could bring the whole thing in, which is fine, or you can bring in individual assets. But for today's example, I'm just going to bring this one in. So I'm just going to export it. So I've got my buttons here, but you can create those. I've shown you how to do that. You hold Control Shift and you can create a button here. But anyway, so I'm just going to export that. Now you'll notice that I've actually capped the ends, which in a low poly model, I'm not going to have those caps in there. I think I showed you last week when I was optimizing, I took them out. For the sculpts, I always cap everything because I'm going to be sculpting on these edges, and if these edges are not capped, you're not going to be able to get the information sculpted inside of them. I've also kept things in quads, so I could triangulate these, but it's better to sculpt in quads because when it sub-Ds, it's better quads basically than triangles. So I always try and keep things in quads as best as possible for these sort of things. So I'm just going to export this. I've already done that, haven't I? Yep. Where is it? Demo wall. And I'm just going to load up ZBrush and cross my fingers and hope that it does it. I heard there was a big uptake of people asking for ZBrush licenses last week from our technical office, so that's good. Okay. So, your ZBrush might look a little bit different to mine because I've actually done some edits to it. One of these is I've got all these buttons down here. I've also got rid of some of these buttons as well so they actually fit on the screen because a lot of these are hotkeyed. I also have the active points and total points thingy here. So I've done a little bit of editing inside of ZBrush to get my ZBrush looking how I want it to because, like I said, some of these buttons I never use anyway. So I'm just going to import my subtool. I hate this. I should be able to set up a project folder, which is really annoying. Demo scene. Okay. Because it's one individual thing, I don't need to worry about the polygroup stuff. And then I'm just going to draw it on my screen, and then I'm just going to turn on edit mode. I always change this material. I hate the red material, it's god awful. I'll turn on perspective as well, and then yeah, I'll go from there. So I've got this now. I'm going to ignore these shading issues because, like I said, it's I don't need to worry too much about that because this is going to be throwaway anyway. High poly is always meant to be throwaway model, and it's not meant to be thingy. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to subdivide this. I'm going to give it a couple of divisions. And then I'm just going to turn the smooth on and subdivide it again, just so I get a softer edge. And the reason for that is because if you put this alongside the other stuff that I'm going to sculpt, it's going to give me this natural crevice of looking like an actual wall seam where it's been cemented in and that sort of stuff. So I always do like I subdivide it, and then like the top 2 or top 1 I'll thingy. Now I'm going to leave it at that 500,000 for this demonstration, because we are going to decimate it anyway, and when we bring it back out. Now, there's a couple of things. You guys have got the orbs brush that I put on canvas, and all I did was let me just find the ZBrush startup. Let me find that C drive. So on the C drive there is Pixelogic under program files, and then under startup you can put, here we go, you can put some brushes. So the only issue when you put loads of brushes in startup is that when you try and load in things like this, it sometimes causes issues. So I always put the orbs brush in my startup folder, which is situated here. So brush presets, and I've got the orb brushes inside of here. Any new brushes that I get though, I always put them in here. And the reason for that is because then what I'll do is I'll go onto Lightbox, go to brushes, and then I've got my brushes here. So I can like say I wanted to use this one. And that sort of stuff. So I always keep the orbs brushes in the startup, and then any new brushes I get, I always put them in the just the brushes folder, and then go through Lightbox to get them, because like I tried it once and it was like I couldn't see half the brushes down here because I put so many in. So just be careful with that. So the first thing I'm going to do is, this is supposed to be stone, so I'm going to kind of rough up the edges basically. And what I'll do as well is I'll look at reference when I'm doing this, just so I can see. So the first thing I will do is use something called trim dynamic. So if I type in trim, you might need to load this brush in. For me it's already loaded in because it's part of this thing here. But if you can't find a brush when you search for it, it means that it's just not loaded in. So you can load it in, or you can go through Lightbox here and go to brushes, go to trim, and then you can find it here. So trim dynamic. So yeah, so multiple ways of loading in brushes, but the easiest one that I found, if it isn't in this original startup document, is go through Lightbox, and you can find a whole range of brushes through there. And then the best thing with that is it will come up as most recent, so you can see here I can just easily then, once I've loaded it in for this session, I can easily go back here and sort this out. So in terms of that, so that's that. So I'm going to start to batch this soften it, and all I'm doing is maybe reducing the brush size a bit, and I'm just basically disturbing the flow of pixels so it's not a square, because if you notice a lot of stylized, you get these rough edges like this, and in the bake it's going to come out as thing. Now if I wanted to kind of like properly damage this, which I'll show you in a minute, because we'll use it for thingy, and I'll keep looking from different angles as well so that I'm getting an alright thing. I'm going to do the same with these edges as well, and I'm just using this to kind of roughen up these edges and make it look more stylized and worn. And I'm just making sure that I undo stuff as well. Now do be careful, if you are getting backside faces doing this, you can turn off backface culling, backface mask, which is in brush, and if you go down here you can turn on backface mask, and it won't do anything on the backside here, but it will still do stuff. underneath here. So let me just come out to there. Now, what I also do is I put symmetry on, but at the moment the symmetry is not working, so I would need to kind of set that up, and I always forget where it is. Here we go. So under transform, what's up with you? Let's not do that. Sometimes if you're working on stuff, so yeah, so I can use symmetry for this. So if I wanted to do that, but for this I'm going to carry on just. And I'm holding shift to soften that as well. And I can make some bigger dents because this is not going to be repeated, so I can make some slightly bigger dents in here, maybe. On that. So I'll go around the whole model and do that around the edges and that sort of stuff. The only places where I probably wouldn't do it is, let me just go back to C-pivot. I probably wouldn't do it on this edge here. I mean, it all depends really what it's going to look like. Have a think about where the damage would be as well on something like this. Now, if I was to take bigger chunks out of this, so if I say I wanted to take like a whole chunk out of this, I could use clay tubes. And if I hold Alt, I can start to really bash in some like chunks out of this. And then what I would do is then go in with the trim dynamic, and because it's over stylized, I would get rid of the harsher edges on this, on there. So yeah, so that's one way of doing it that way. Also, there is a really cool brush which I always forget what it's called. I think it's called Trim Adaptive. And if I turn on an alpha, okay, a square alpha, and hold Alt, I can start to fill in that detail again. And what I'm doing, I've been dragging from the flat bit, and it will adapt the brush in that way. And then again, because it's stylized, I'm going to kind of soften this out. I can also do clay tubes for something else. So for example, if I was doing wood, I could actually use it for wood. So what to get the so you can see you can start to get very kind of stylized wood with it as well. So a lot of these brushes that you can use inside of ZBrush have multiple functions as long as you kind of use them together to kind of get what you want. And now what I would do is go into not that. Okay. To find the brush. I swear it's just easier to go into Lightbox than it is to actually try and find it. So Fast Mallet. Where are you? I mean, you could use a high HP, high polish. To do this. And all I'm doing is to get rid of that in between detail, but keeping those little you see how I've gone from it being stone to looking kind of wood effect. So that's one way of that you could use that brush to do that, which was the clay tubes and H polish. Now I need to undo all this. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do with this is I'm going to add a little bit of surface detail in, assuming that I've already kind of sculpted everything and done all the sides and that sort of stuff. Let's do a bit more trim here. Because again, it's very cartoony, and again, I can use the high poly brush to do this as well. So I want it looking a bit more trimmed, a bit more rocky. Another brush is the there is a Orbs brush as well, which has probably changed the strength of it. Which can kind of get the same effect. Okay, so the next thing is in this orbs thing, there's called a rock detail brush, which gives you this kind of like rock face detail. What's up with you? There you go. I accidentally put the mask on. I do that all the time with ZBrush. And I have to kind of Google what I did because, like I said, I don't really use it as much. But yeah, so there's this orbs rock thing, which is good for kind of getting like a very basic rock kind of thing. Now, the only thing with this is obviously it looks very uniformed, so what I'd recommend is probably not using it as much, or if you are going to use it, come in and use like the polish to kind of bring some of the detail in there. And I think you can also put an alpha, like a square alpha on, and that would put some of this kind of more rocky feel to it. You can add to it or build up to it. And that can be used in conjunction with like clay tubes as well. So, and then using like a trim dynamic to kind of soften, if that's what you're kind of going for. So yeah, so just be careful with the orbs one, because it can, if you put it on, looking on all of it, it may look all the same, and you just have to kind of add some variation. Now, another thing what you can do for surface detail is it's got a very good noise thing generator. So if I go into surface and go into noise, it's going to bring up with this. I can have a look at this. And I'm just going to create some noise. Let's see it here. maybe. And this is all experimenting. That's the thing. I can tell you a number, but if it doesn't look right on your model, then you're going to need to experiment with it. So it's all about looking at and experimenting and seeing what looks good. I might bring the strength down a bit and click OK. Now the issue with this at the moment is the model isn't high enough res, so we are going to just add another subdivision to it, so it gets a bit more high resolution. But the problem is it's now 2.2 million, because it won't actually apply until you click apply to mesh. So that's good. So if we're not happy with that going to 2.3 million, I'm just going to apply to mesh now. And with this as well, what you can do is again grabbing like a high polish brush, yeah. So yeah, you can do that, or if it's got. And you could get rid of it as well by using the what is it, trim adaptive holding thingy, and then using kind of like a trim dynamic to kind of soften it. Another way of kind of getting rid of this would be, because obviously you want to tone down the surface detail. So one way would be to actually putting it on a layer. Now, layers don't always work for me, but we'll give it a go and see if it will let me do it. So if I just come to layers and just click this one here, I'm gonna rename it. And then if I put the surface thing on, some noise. Say I'm not happy with this, I could tone it down as well using a layer. So I'm basically not damaging what I've got underneath on there. I can make it. So that's one way of doing this. And I always do this surface noise at the end. And to be fair, with stylize, you might not want this surface noise because it can be quite distracting. So you kind of want the bigger, bolder shapes for this. The only thing is, obviously, you would have to delete the layer or make a new layer to start sculpting in if you wanted to do more stuff, or else it just won't work. So yeah, so let me grab. And I'll use trim dynamic to Let's soften some of this. I've also got a pack that I use if I want to create some holes as well. Where are you? This is more in a realistic pack. So yeah, the only issue with this is that obviously it's quite uniformed again, so it's better to kind of go in and with the trim adaptive brush and go in and paint some of that out and then trim dynamic. So yeah, it's all about layering up and kind of getting that kind of base sculpt and layering it up and going from there basically. You can also soften these like that, so if there's it's too much. For cracks as well, I've got a few that I use. One of them, these orb slash brushes are quite good for stylization. So you can kind of properly crack things in, and then again I go in with a trim dynamic and start to kind of stylize it a little bit. I'm breaking up the silhouette there as well. Maybe bring it in so it's like that. There's a few other ones as well, so I can orb slash do something like that, and then go in with the. And I mean, this is like worst case scenario of damage. Like this is a lot of damage for something like this, but it's just to show you guys different tools and brushes. Now I could use like a crack brush. So like these brushes are really cool, but again they're very kind of realistic. So what I would do then is kind of go in and and then I could use the trim adaptive as well to kind of close in some of this. So yeah. So for stylize, you're looking at thingy, and I tend to do all the crack stuff before I put like that overlay of the rock base texture stuff. So yeah, so that's kind of what I would do, and kind of go in and break up some of the lines and stuff. Like having like chunks of it missing is also sometimes good. Ooh, no, maybe not. So like what I did up there. But anyway, so I've sculpted it. I'm ready to go. I need to bring it back into Maya to do some retopologizing, because surface detail like this is fine, like little dots like this, and this to an extent will come out in the bake. This and this won't, because it's too deep. Like there's only so much you can push a normal map basically, and the normal map will push to about this detail, the surface detail, maybe this, and these dots, that's it. Everything else you're going to have to kind of retopologize because it's gone in so much and changed the silhouette that you're going to need to change with it. Okay, so once I'm ready, I'm going to export this back out. I'm just going to close these things down. Now, the first thing I need to do is I need to decimate it because at the moment it's sitting at 500,000, which isn't too bad in the grand scheme of things. Like if I bring this back up, if I subdivide this again, oh, hello, I've got a layer. Anyway. Okay, if you want to just turn that off, you can do. See how I put it on that layer now? So everything I did has been recorded on that layer. So if I wanted to go back to like where I started, I can do. But you just have to make sure it's turned off record, or else you can't do anything to it basically. Right, subdivide that again. It's now at 2 million, so we can work with that. So if I go to Z plugin and I go to decimation master, and the first thing we need to do is capture the print basically. So what we're going to do is pre-press current, which is this one. So that will pre-process the current selection, or you can pre-process the whole thing. And this will take a while because it's gathering data. So you probably don't want to do it for a character. You probably want to do it for all of it, but for environment pieces, if you've got multiple pieces in a scene that are quite big in poly, you probably want to do it per subtool. What I always do as well is before I do this, I will save a version. So before I decimate this, I will go File, Save As, and then wherever you're going to save it. So I'm just going to save it on the desktop for now. Call it Wall version 1. It just means if I screw up and I need to go back, I can do. Because once you decimate, then that's it. That's the model decimated. You could save it as the subtool. So first, I'm going to rename it. So I'm going to call it wall underscore high. And when I show you substance painted baking, you'll understand why I went underscore high. And then what I'll do then is I can save this subtool if I remember rightly. So I can save as, and I can save this, I'll save it on the desktop as a Z tool. And that means that before I decimate this, it will be saved, and I can reload this back in if anything screws up. So there's two ways of saving the work, which I'm hoping Louis showed you last semester. Yes, no, maybe. Yeah, okay. So the next thing I'm going to do is pre-processed. I cannot speak outwards today. It's pre-processed, so I'm going to decimate. Now I'm going to decimate it to 20% of, not 20% of that value, but 20% final value. So if I was to decimate it by 50%, it would be 1 million. If I decimated by 75, it would be 1 point something million. So the lower number works. So let's process this to, let's see what it is to 20%. Decimate current. Oh, I hate you right now. Pre-process current. I'm just going to have to pre-process it. Okay, that's completed. So let's go into the Z plugin, decimate current. Now it'll go a lot quicker, this will, because you're not having to, it's already been pre-processed, you're just telling it to decimate. And as you can see here, it's decimated to 445,000 polygons. Okay, so I'm just going to do that again. I'm going to decimate to, say, 15%. You'll see now it's 334,000. So you can see the lower the number you're decimating, the lower this value is going to be, basically. And it's kept all the detail, like the shape and silhouette hasn't changed, but the amount of polygons. And if I hold Shift F, you'll see that all the detail is where all the surface detail is, and then you can see at the top. You could not put that into a game engine. That, you can imagine trying to UV that would be just a nightmare. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to export this. So I'm just going to go to Z plugin, and I'm going to go to FBX exporter. I'm going to go selected, that's fine, that's fine. I'm going to export this as an FBX. Save. It will take a while. Just bear with it. Don't click on anything. It's exported. I'll close this down now because I'm not going to use it. Nope. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring that inside of Maya. Going to take a while because it is still reading like 300,000 polygons. Now, as you can see here, because the silhouette has changed quite a bit, we're going to have to retopologize this because we want to capture that. In a bake, that would not work. It would look really weird. So, and in a bake as well, what you would have to do is you'd have to bevel the edges as well on here, which you can see I've done on this one. So you can see that this bevel will capture the data that I've baked here, but trying to capture this data in a high poly bake isn't going to work. So I'm just going to, so we're going to retopologize this, and that is an eyesore. Ow. Okay, so the next thing is we're going to use Quad Draw to do this. So I'm actually going to just remove my tablet, so I'll get them mouse space. And then if I make this selection live, so where are you? There we go. So that means now anything we draw on here is going to basically stick to it like a magnet. And I showed you Quad Draw a couple of weeks ago when I was like planning out the pattern work. And it's the same thing basically. So once you've made your object live, like so, you go into Quad Draw, and then you can start to plot this out. Now, one thing I am going to do is I have to think about this. So I'm going to add 2 points there. And so I'm just plotting the points. And then when I want to fill it in, I hold Shift and left click, and that allows me to fill in this thing. As you can see, it's actually become pretty much close to the actual object. So then I can continue this. So and I can hold Shift to relax this as well, and left click, and that will smooth it out a little bit. And if I wanted to put another line in, I can do. If I hold Control, I can actually put another line in. And I can move these around as well. And if I want to snap them to a point, I can just move them to that point and they will snap automatically on there. So for this, if I wanted to delete a line, I always forget this one, so bear with me. I can also see what the keyboard shortcut is for here. So if I scroll down, I can see that if I where's the delete? Control Shift. Ah, there we go. Can I do click edge to insert centered loop? And I can go around and do this for it, and it's the same down here as well. So and then what I would do is And if I press Q, that will get rid of that tool. And then I could actually go in and use some other tools like multi-cut. So, or grab the vertices on this and hold J to snap it so that it's all in line with each other. And the same up here as well, like if I just hide this so we can see it, I could use the multi-cut, so hold shift, right mouse button, multi-cut to kind of bring those lines in on there. Because you've got to be careful with n-gons and that sort of stuff. But yeah, like, where are you? Let's make that live again. And then if I select this and go quad draw, I'm back in and I'm editing it. So has anybody got any questions about quad draw? Is anybody panicking over it? Or do you guys, what do you guys think?
I mean, it'll all be covered in the videos, right? If you're uploading them.
Yeah, I'm just uploading this one, yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I'll watch it all through at my own pace then.
Yeah, I mean, I put some videos up on.
So far, anyways.
Yeah, it's really straightforward. It is. It sounds like a pain, and if you're doing environments, you might not necessarily have to do this. This is if, like, for example, if your sculpt you've properly gone and damaged something, or rocks, that have completely changed the silhouette, then you would need to kind of retopologize, because a normal map will not support the silhouette. All it really, a normal map is used for is to support surface detail, like brick patterns and the surface detail that you saw in the Zbrush sculpt with the kind of rock and the holes and that sort of stuff. Normal maps are good for that. For actual holding silhouette, normal maps, you won't get away with just using a normal map. You'll have to actually retopologize some of it as well. Yeah, rocks, you would have to do this step because they're just, yeah, there's no way you wouldn't get away with it. Let me show you file open. Let me find an asset that I was working on just before Christmas, which is in a mod. I've got to find it though, so bear with me. So if you've just smoothed and rounded off edges, you could get away with just being a bevel. So you could just bevel the edge, and then you've got the supporting geometry in there to capture that data that you've done. This for environments is only really used when you've got something very like it's changed the silhouette of the base mesh. So as you can see here, there's a massive dent in it, so it would need it. You could get away, if it was just this surface detail here, you can get away with it just being a bevel, and then that's it, and it should work as long as it's roughly around there. Like, what you don't want to be doing, before I open that other one, is like like that should be fine, because it's gonna capture that thingy. But if this was sticking out just with a bevel on it, it's not going to capture it very well. So yeah, I think it's this one. Let's double check. Let's just save that one just in case I need to come back to it. Nope, not that one. Ah. So as you can see here, it's there we go. So that's the high poly. So there's no way that's going to look any good with if you haven't changed the silhouette of the low poly. So that's why you've got, I did that there for the bake. And again, it's just very much kind of just going in and using the quad draw and just thinking about like how I want the thing to kind of have. So like definitely here. And then coming out to here. If I remember rightly, I put a middle line in as well. So like, I think it actually went. And then it is. Don't get me wrong. It is an absolute pain in the ass, but it's a necessary step to get your models looking good. Especially if there's quite a lot of if there's depths in the damage for environments, then you need to do this because it's otherwise it's just going to look quite flat and fake. So there's no point actually sculpting. And at that point, it's like, well, why are you sculpting if it's going to look flat anyway? So it's but it's a necessary step. It's very it's not creative. It's very there's rules, and the rules is the geometry needs to flow and needs to be there to support the high poly bake. So it isn't where you can be creative like when you're sculpting. You're being very creative. You're kind of hands on. You're doing that work. But once this stage is very much you just need to get it out of the way basically. And if I open up that other scene a minute, where are you? And if we look at hide. This is Louis's character. And that is the high poly. Yeah, I don't even think he decimated it. No wonder my mayor was struggling a minute ago. But yeah, so that's the high poly, and then this is the low poly, which is basically created using the same method there, using quad draw. So if I just give this a go, this is the first time I've retopologized a character ever, because I don't do characters. But it's the same process, but it's more looking at the eye shape. So if I grab the quad draw, me as a character artist, me as not a character artist, I could easily retopologize this if I got asked to, because it's principles. So it's like all I would need is some information from like the PowerPoint where it's looking at like how the eye lobes go and how things flow with each other, and you avoid pinching points. So I could, if a company asked me to retopologize a character for them, I could easily do it, because it's not creative. It's not me having to come up with a whole character design. It's me just basically connecting the dots. So like Now, the issue is, because he didn't decimate it, it's killing my computer. So please decimate your characters before you bring them back into Maya, because that's this happens. You have to play catch up. Cool. Has anybody got any questions? Where's Leo's? Something I'm wondering. Wouldn't changing the silhouette so much affect the UV mapping? At this stage, you shouldn't have UV mapped. Because the retopologizing comes before UVing. For the environment stuff, yeah, UVing should always come after retopologizing. Yeah, because at the moment because the mesh that you're gonna make UV isn't the high poly. Please never try and UV a high poly, because it's what we call throwaway modeling. The high poly is throwaway modeling because all it does is serves the purpose of baking that detail in. When it comes to the actual UV, and it comes after the retopologizing stage. So for the environment stuff, you could try and just retopologize that area and then kind of fit it in with your mesh. So if I just go back to, we'll unlive that. Let me just go back to this. So I could, he says, I could take these areas here. Why won't you let me work? There we go. So yeah, so I could actually take these areas into, say, my low poly, which I've done here. And get them to fit in. But it'd probably be just easier if I just go around and actually do it myself. And yeah, if I just make this thing live again, something like that, go to, yeah, probably easier for me just to kind of finish this off. Because you can, like I said, you can get rid of these edges, so it could be very clean anyway. Like said earlier on. And then for this bit here, you could actually triangulate this into the corner here. Because at the end of the day, you don't need that in. You could, yes, you could boolean it as well. I'll try that in a minute. So you could do this. Now, I don't know whether that's going to work though, so we'll give it a go and see, because I've never actually tried it. So we probably just want this bit here, so I'm just going to extract this face. And I probably just don't want this corner piece. Probably get rid of that as well. And if we grab from here, make a duplicate of that so I don't screw it up. Always make duplicates because it's just easier. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to select that, extract that face, get rid of that, and then. So I'm not sure whether this is going to work. Let's see. Nah. Boolean is very, very temperamental. So the Boolean isn't going to work, I don't think. Yeah. You see here, it's Boolean. As soon as if it's a plane, it doesn't like it. Basically, I think that's the problem here. Because it's a single-faced side, it doesn't like it, so it's not going to do it. But what we could do is, so the only thing I would suggest is that we bring that up. I know, I don't know why, but it just doesn't like it. So what we can do is I'm just going to hold V to snap this so it's in line with that. Because then what I can do is this. So I could insert, no, not there. So I'll just grab the insert edge loop tool. No, I would not extrude the faces up because it's on such an angle that it's going to cause issues. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to multi-cut this. So delete that, delete that, delete that. Now what I'm going to do is and then I'm just going to merge these because I don't need them. Make sure I only select one. Same with the bottom ones. Okay, it would have been quicker to Boolean, but trying to figure out why it's not Boolean is probably not the quickest way to do this. So I'm just merging the vertices, that's all I'm doing there. And there you go. So instead of having to kind of like retopologize the whole thing, if you've already got one that low poly that's already built, with environment stuff, you can do it this way. Characters, you cannot do it this way. You need to retopologize. So I'm holding Shift, right mouse button. So select the vertice, Shift, right mouse button, and merge to center or merge vertice. So there we go. You can see it's gone from 30 to 23. So character artists, there's no easy way of doing this. Environment artists, make it work basically however you want it. As long as it looks good at the end, that's fine. But yeah, sorry. I shouldn't be chuckling inside to the character artists having to do the full retopologizing, because it is boring. Don't get me wrong, it's really boring. But you need to do it basically, because you cannot put a 6 million poly character into engine. Put some music on. Normally when I'm UVing, I normally listen to heavy metal and rock anyway, so, but yeah. Yeah, so Shift. So if you want to select the verts, Shift, right mouse button, merge verts. So I always use marking menus, so that's Shift, right mouse button, and then all the tools you're ever going to use are all situated there. So just marking menus. You could make a tool. A tool for what? Do you mean an automated retopologizing tool? Yeah, but nothing's going to be as good as your eye and understanding that edge flows need to flow. And the thing is, you could do an automatic cleanup on it through Maya, which is a tool. But the problem with that is everything looks like it just higgledy-piggledy basically, and you'll be as worse off as if you just left the decimation on basically. So there's no easy way around it, because if you leave it up to the computer to decide, it's not going to be what you want. So this is a stage where you have to do it. So if we'll just go back to the character. And then you can this is so much quicker than it used to be. You used to have to do this kind of manually before you had Topo Gun and Quad Draw and that sort of stuff. So you'd have to kind of manually do it yourself. So you guys, yeah, like back in the day. Probably Louis is so much better than mine, probably, if we have a look at it. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Anybody got any questions?
No, I think we're all good.
Okay.
No,
Does
I
any?
think Sarah has something to say.
Okay. Oh, wait. I did put 2 videos up on Canvas from Flip Normals who talk about why you do this, why you retopologize characters. I always go back to Flip Normals because they're really good when it comes to kind of showing these breakdowns and that sort of stuff. So definitely check those videos out if yeah. For next week, I'm not expecting you to be at the stage of retopologizing. I'm expecting you to have obviously started sculpting and started to sculpt detail into the character or model detail into the environments and that sort of stuff. Like I said, the environments don't necessarily need to go through this sculpt phase. But if you want to kind of get those nice details, stylized details, and then you probably want to go through it basically and use ZBrush as an environment. But yeah, I'm not expecting to be retopologized for next week. No way. That's not going to happen. So let me just load up ZBrush again. There is another brush that I use. It's an addition. I don't know whether anybody's used it. Is Lazy Mouse on a brush. And there was another thing I wanted to show you as well. I can plug my tablet back in. So another thing that I use is something called Lazy Mouse. And what I'm just going to do is just turn that on. So I'm going to go back face masking because I don't want it going on in there. Whoa. I forgot, yeah. That's the only issue with layers, is that it will. I'm going to delete that for the time being. Delete. And I think by standard, this is already on. But if you come under stroke and come under Lazy Mouse, you can change the steps on it. So as you can see here. So if I wanted to say do very stylized wood, yeah. I can do that. I'm not sure why it's doing that, but I can use this to kind of tweak it. Start to really over exaggerate it. So yeah, Lazy Mouse is good for that. You can properly draw on it. But yeah, that's under stroke, and then you can turn it. You can turn it on with any brush. On there. One other thing I wanted to show you, and I forgot. I've actually forgot what it was. The kill. Mirror. So sometimes you may need to, if you're mirroring things across, you can do inside a ZBrush. So for example, on the bit that goes down this bit, I wouldn't bring this bit in to sculpt it. I would bring just one version in and then mirror it across. And you can do that. So this is the transpose tool, so you can move your object around, you can scale it if you really want to. I wouldn't recommend doing that. But you can also, like, if the pivot's wrong, you can change the pivot as well, and that sort of stuff. So it's thingy. So sometimes, I'll just unlock. You can change where the pivot is. So if I wanted to flip this over to that side, I would put the pivot in the middle and then just lock it. And then what I can do is using Z plugin, Subtool Master, and go mirror. I can mirror it in different axes. That didn't work, but we'll let it construct. Okay. Bear with it, because it's like 4 million. It's a good job it's an RTX 2070 Max Q. Yeah. Not provided by the university, provided by my freelance. Yeah, no, it's like an i7, newer version, and it's on ZBrush is on a Evo drive, so an M200. Don't think it's going to work. I think it's crashed. There you go. It may come back. It may not. I don't know. I might have just thinking. But you can, using the that tool, you can basically flip an object over. So if you've done very light damage detail, and say you wanted to make flip it over so that you've got another piece, then that you can do that as well. So. Interesting. Okay.